very basic webinar about the most essential parts of the research journey in education. We will generally mention about the research planning, how do we conduct and report a literature review, and searching for literature on the internet, research design and methodology, data analysis, and presenting and reporting the results. There are many types of research designs, and according to our questions, according to our purposes, we need to select the most appropriate research design. For example, if you want to test a hypothesis or theory, an experimental design, a survey, or action research might be the most appropriate one, or maybe a case study. If you want to develop a theory, we can select a qualitative research such as ethnography or a grounded theory. Especially grounded theory will be the most appropriate one if you want to develop a theory. If you want to measure the perceptions, attitudes, or behaviors, we can design a survey or an experiment. If you want to understand a current situation, if you want to describe a situation as it is, then a qualitative approach might be appropriate, such as an ethnographic study. If you want to see what happens if we manipulate several variables or a variable, then we can design an experimental study or a participatory research, maybe an action research. If you want to find out what and why, what is the current situation, and what are the reasons, why did that happen, then we can design a mixed methods research in which we can use both qualitative and quantitative research methods, and we can use triangulation, we can use different source of information and different tools to collect the data. Mixed methods research is the best way to understand the causality paths. If you want to find out what happened in the past, then the historical research might be the answer. These are various elements of research design. We should state the problem very clearly in our research. What gave rise to the research? We should define the problem. And what is the grounding literature? We should situate the problem and the research aims clearly in the relevant literature. If you want to conduct a research, this problem situation shouldn't be answered by other research results. So there should be a gap in the literature if you want to conduct a research. Otherwise, it's not meaningful. It's not a contribution to the literature. It's not a contribution to the science. There should be a specific problem, and in the literature review section, we need to situate this problem in the relevant literature. And what are the constraints of the research? Maybe access to resources, or time constraints, or people and politics. What are the aims and purposes? According to our problem, we should write our aims and purposes very clearly. And we should operationalize our research aims and purposes. Well, what does it mean? Our aims and purposes should be written in a testable format. It should be operationalized. And we should write what are the intended outcomes? What are the expected outcomes of this research? It should be meaningful. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to conduct a research. What are the research questions? And what are the foci of the research? We should have specific foci, or maybe one specific focus, if we want to conduct a research. What are the priorities of this research, and which methodology or methodologies are appropriate to answer those research questions, or to reach the aims or purposes of the research, or to solve the research problem? we should select the most appropriate methodology. And what are the ethical issues? We should solve our ethical issues. If we need permission, we should take the necessary permissions. What are the audiences of the research? We should specify the audience very clearly. And the instrumentation, which instruments, which measurement tools are the most appropriate to measure a specific concept or to define the current situation. And the sampling, which sample is the most suitable one to measure this concept, or what samples are the most appropriate ones. Sometimes we need to do pilot studies, especially in quantitative studies, or if we want to develop a measure, if we want to develop a scale, we need to conduct pilot studies. We need to specify time frames and sequence very clearly in the preparation stage. What time do we expect to complete which duties in times of preparation and conducting the research and reporting? We should write our time frames. Which types of resources are required to complete this type of research? Reliability and validity is among the most important issues. And we need to make sure we have the required tools to validate our research questions. And the data analysis, which types of analysis are the most appropriate ones to answer those questions or to solve this problem? How do we verify and validate the data? And how do we report or write up the research? Maybe it might be an ongoing writing during the research, or might be a summative reporting at the end of the research. Now we can take a look at the essential stages of quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method research. We can start with quantitative research. At the first, we shall situate our problem, our hypothesis in the relevant literature by conducting a comprehensive literature review. And then in the end of the literature review, we can formulate and generate our hypothesis or the theory or theories to be tested or our research questions. There are different approaches. We can formulate either hypothesis or research questions. How do we design the research to test the hypothesis? We need to select the most suitable design, the most suitable methodology or approach to test our hypothesis. It might be an experiment, might be a survey, or might be a qualitative study. Then we can conduct, as soon as we decide all those items, then we can conduct our research. After collecting the data, we can analyze our results, and then we can consider alternative explanations for the findings. After analyzing the results and reporting the results, at the discussion section, we should discuss our findings comparatively with the results of the other relevant studies, and we should try to find alternative explanations for our findings. We should be objective while explaining our findings. We should report whether the hypothesis or the theory is supported or not supported, and or answer the research questions. And in the discussion section, both in the literature section, literature review section, and the discussion section, we should report all types of resources, all types of relevant resources, regardless of they're supporting or not supporting our results. And then in the end, we can consider the generalizability of the findings, especially in the quantitative studies. We try to reach a higher sample as far as we can. to represent the population, to represent the whole population. We should try to randomize the sample, and we should try to reach a high number of high number of people, if these are people, to generalize, in order to generalize our findings. Otherwise, we cannot generalize. If the sample is not representing the population, we cannot generalize our findings in our research. And this is among the most common problems in quantitative research. What about the stage in qualitative research? These are very general, very basic items. At the first, we should identify the topic or group or phenomenon for research. And in the literature review, we should state our research problem or the focus or the phenomenon in the literature review. And then we can design research questions, research and data collection. There are many types of data collection methods in qualitative research. And in qualitative research, data collection stage takes more time than quantitative research in general. We cannot generalize this statement, but in general, qualitative research takes a lot of time. The methods might not be such complicated as it was in quantitative research, especially in the data analysis stage. But it takes more time to collect the data, to conduct the research, to collect the data, and to analyze the data. The data analysis is not complicated, but it takes more time and more effort for the researchers. We should locate fields of study and our role as a researcher in the research or situation. We should locate informants, gatekeepers, or sources of information in qualitative research in the preparation stage. And then we will develop working relations with participants. Then we can conduct the research and the data collection simultaneously. It might be simultaneously or an ongoing basis as the situation emerges and evolves, or conduct the data analysis subsequent to the research. While we are conducting the data in the qualitative research, we can at the same time analyze the results, or maybe we can complete the data collection stage and then we can analyze the results. There are several approaches. We should select the most appropriate one. And then in the end, we should report the results and the grounded theory or answers to the research questions that emerge from the research. And as a result, we can generate a hypothesis or hypotheses for further research or testing. If we want to develop a theory, then we can think of conducting a qualitative research. What about the basic states of mixed methods research? What do we mean by mixed methods term? We mean using both quantitative and qualitative methods, data collection and analysis methods, and at the same time, different kinds of resources and different sources of information at the same time. If we need to do that, then we can design a mixed methods research. In the beginning, we should identify the problem or issue. And then we can formulate our research questions. We can identify several kinds of data and the methods for collecting them, which together and or separately, that will yield answers to the research questions. Then we can plan our mixed methods design. There are several approaches. We can do the qualitative or the quantitative parts first, and then the remaining part, or we can do both quantitative and qualitative parts at the same time. There are several names of these approaches. For example, parallel mixed design, fully integrated mixed design, or sequential mixed design. We should select the most appropriate one. And then we can conduct the research, we can analyze the results, and we can consider alternative explanations for the findings in the end. But it takes more time to design and to conduct mixed methods research. We should try to ensure triangulation, to triangulate the data. I mean, we should use various sources of information and various tools to collect the data, including both quantitative and qualitative tools, data collection methods and data analysis methods at the same time. So it takes more time. And then using those methods, we can answer our research questions, and then we can report the results. Maybe we can take a look at Maxwell's integrative model of research design. There are 5 essential parts of integrative design model. We should have a strong conceptual framework, and we should situate our goals or our problem within this theoretical or conceptual framework very clearly. And now we should express our research questions very specifically. And then we can select the most appropriate methods or approach to collect the data, to design the research, to collect and analyze the data. And then we can, so that we can validate our research questions using those methods. We can take a look very briefly at a sequence of considerations. There are preparatory issues. We should select our approach, our philosophical approach, maybe an ontological or epistemological reasons. Why do we conduct this study? And based on our approach, we should situate our purposes and our foci and our research questions. Methodology, we should also explain our methodological approach, and we should specify how do we ensure reliability and validity in our study. And then sampling and instrumentation, which kind of sample will be most appropriate to validate these research questions, and which instruments are the most appropriate to measure the intended concepts. And timing and sequencing, we should frame our research questions, and we should make a concrete plan. And we will briefly mention the orienting decisions that will have a serious effect on our critical decisions. What is our research design and methodology? Maybe a survey, experiment, or other types of research. We should select the most appropriate ones according to our orienting decisions. We will mention briefly. And data analysis, which types of analysis are the most appropriate for this type of research design. And then in the end, we should present and report the results. What are the orienting decisions? That will have a serious effect on all our decisions in literature review, methodology, and analysis. We should ask these questions to ourselves before giving those critical decisions. Who wants the research? Who will receive the research? What are the time scales of the research? What are the purposes of the research? What are the research questions? What must be the focus in order to answer the research questions? And what costs are there? Might be human costs, material costs, physical or administrative or temporal costs. In the research design and methodology, we should answer those questions. What are the specific purposes of the research? So that we can design the most appropriate methodology, the most appropriate research design and the measurement tools and so forth. How are the general research purposes and aims operationalized into specific research questions? Operationalizing research questions means expressing those research questions specifically and in a testable format in order to help us decide on the methodological questions. What are the specific research questions? We should write very clearly. It might be in the format of hypothesis. What needs to be the focus of the research in order to answer the research questions? We should select our focus in the beginning. What is the main methodology of the research? We can use a different methodological approach, but we can have a main methodology in our research. How will validity and reliability be addressed? How do we ensure validity and reliability in our research? What kinds of data are required to answer those questions? From whom will the data be acquired? Which sample will answer those questions? Or if we try to triangulate data, maybe we can select all the stakeholders in our sampling approach. We can select all the parties that will have something to say about this research question. How will the data be gathered? What are the research tools? What are our scales? Who will undertake the research? Sometimes the researcher, sometimes the other persons if we need. And in the data analysis stage, there are many questions, but maybe we can briefly list 2 questions. How will the data be analyzed? There are many types of data analysis approach. And according to our design, according to the scales we use, according to the types of the scales, we should select the most appropriate types of analysis. And how do we verify and validate the data and their interpretation? How can we present and report the results? There are several questions. How to write up and report the research? When to write up and report the research? It might be an ongoing way during the research or in a summative way at the end of the research. How to present the results in tabular or written out form? To whom to report? The necessary and possible audiences of the research? How frequently to report? Maybe at the end or maybe in an ongoing basis through various reports. Now we can take a look an example time frame and sequencing example. As you can see, we can indicate our sources of information. You can see the types of samples, principals, head teachers, or teachers, students, parents, university staff. If we want to triangulate the data, we should collect the data from all the relevant groups. Whatever it is, we should try to reach all the relevant persons that can give reliable information to answer the research questions. And we can write the stage very clearly in the beginning, and we can write the time frame, maybe 3 months later, 6 months later, and then we can write the sequencing very clearly. And at each stage, which duties should be completed, we should write very clearly at each stage. Especially in a research proposal, we should write those stages very clearly to persuade the evaluators. We should be very specific about those stages, and we should be realistic. We can imagine how long does it take to complete those interviews. If we intend to complete 10 interviews, it might be two months, for example, or to collect the data from the questionnaires, for example, from 1,000 principals or 1,000 teachers, for example. We should be specific and we should be realistic. Maybe we can briefly mention about the literature review. We should set out our arguments very clearly in the literature review. We should set out points in favor of the arguments or thesis to be advanced or supported, and also not only in favor of the arguments, also against the arguments or thesis to be advanced and supported. We should be objective. We should report all the favoring arguments and all the arguments against our own arguments, both in the literature review section and in the discussion section. And we should have a conclusion based on the points raised and evidence presented. There are some more points about the literature review. The literature review should establish and justify the need for the research and its significance, originality, and foci. We should persuade the reader that we need to conduct this type of research by this way. We should persuade the readers. We should have enough justifications in the literature review, and we should prove evidences from the relevant literature that we need to conduct this research. The literature review should establish and justify the methodology to be adopted. And in the literature review, we should also persuade the reader that the most suitable methodological approach is the one we selected for this study. The literature review should have an organized and developed argument, not just a descriptive summary. It's not a piling of cumulative information. We should organize it very clearly to develop our arguments. The literature review should present, contextualize, analyze, interpret, critique, and evaluate sources and issues, not just accepting what they say. It should also present arguments and counter-arguments, evidence and counter-evidence about an issue. I know in my experience, one of the journals rejected one of my papers just for this reason. You stated your ideas based only on one theoretical explanation, and then it was rejected for this reason. And then I tried to find other evidences, other theoretical constructs to support my ideas, to answer my questions, both in the literature review section and in the discussion section. And then I submitted it to another journal, and it was accepted. We should use even the conflicting theories or the other arguments, counter evidences, to straight our theory, to straight our research questions. Our literature review should reveal similarities and differences between authors about the same issue. It should be comprehensive. If you want to submit it, if you want to submit your study to a top journal, you should have a very comprehensive literature review, and it should analyze, critique, and interpret all the findings. It should also state the purposes very clearly, the foci, methods of working, organization, and how it will move to a conclusion. For example, what it will do, what this research will do, what it will argue, what it will show, what it will conclude, and how this links into or informs the subsequent research project. Literature review should be a springboard into and foundation for all areas and stages of the research in question. For example, our purpose, foci, research questions, methodology, data analysis, discussion, and conclusion. Literature review must be conclusive and comprehensive. It must be focused yet comprehensive in its coverage of relevant issues. Literature review must present both sides of an issue or argument, not only one side. It should also address theories, models, if it's relevant, empirical research, methodological materials, substantive issues, concepts, content, and elements of the field in question. Literature review should also include and draw on many sources and types of written material and kinds of data. In our literature review, we can use various sources of information, but in academic writing, we generally prefer to use peer-reviewed journals or peer-reviewed books or book chapters. We generally prefer these two resources. We believe the most reliable resources are the ones that were undergone a strong peer review process. But we can also use other things, other information, such as non-academic journal articles or non-academic books or non-empirical research, other reports. These reports might not be scientific resources, or policy documents, public or private records, and so forth, or thesis, dissertations. But we don't generally trust the other non-scientific, non-empirical reports or books or non-academic resources. We don't generally trust them because people have arguments in those reports or non-academic works that weren't supported by strong scientific methodologies. We generally focus scientific resources. These are peer-reviewed journals and peer-reviewed academic books or book chapters. We don't even use, in general, some people widely use, but I don't prefer to use theses and dissertations. The peer review, we cannot say it has a strong peer review process. So I know, especially top journals, from the top journals, you may face objections by the editorial team if you use non-academic resources. But it doesn't mean you cannot use. Yes, you can use. These are also scientific resources, the theses and dissertations, but there are some objections. There are some objections about this. How can we operationalize research? We should specify a set of operations or behaviors that can be measured, addressed, or manipulated. We should translate a very general research aim or purpose into specific, concrete questions to which specific, concrete answers can be given. We should move from the general to the particular, from the abstract to the concrete, to operationalize our research questions. We should break down each general research purpose or general aim into more specific research purposes and constituent elements, continuing the process until specific, concrete questions have been reached to which specific answers can be provided. To write a good hypothesis, we should be very clear on whether it should be a directional or non-directional hypothesis. We should write it in a testable form, and we should write it in a form that can yield measurable results. Now, there are several stages in the planning process. In stage 1, we should identify the purposes of the research. At stage 2, we should identify and give priority to the constraints under which the research will take place. At stage 3, we should plan the possibilities for the research within these constraints. At stage 4, we should decide the research design. How can we ensure quality in research planning? Especially at the methodology books, you can come across those explanations. I mentioned the fitness for purpose. What does it mean? It means theoretical and methodological robustness. And more specifically, it means the trustworthiness of the research. How can we trust the results of the research? We should have used valid and reliable tools to measure the concepts, and we should have selected a representative sample. We should have used the most appropriate methodological approach or the design. And to measure the quality of a research, we should ask this question: what is its contribution to knowledge production in scientific literature? Does it have a significant contribution to the literature? And to understand this, we should ask this question: has this question been answered by other research? If it's not, then yes, we can say it's a significant contribution to the literature. And is it an original? Is it an original study, an original design, an original problem situation that wasn't answered before? Then we can say it's a significant contribution to science. And then we can ask this question: what is its explicitness in designing and reporting? The design and report should be as explicit as possible. And its propriety, it means that its conformance to legal and ethical requirements. Some journals might require from you to present your ethical permissions. Some journals don't, but you can just state, yes, we received the ethical permissions to conduct this research. What is the paradigm dependence? Is it paradigm dependence? It means that it's fidelity to the paradigm, ontology, and epistemological premises of the research that the research demonstrates. Again, the fitness of purpose. The second item is value for use. To understand the quality of research, we should ask this question: is it salient? Is it a timely research? In this time, under those circumstances, is it a timely study? Or it might be an outdated study. If the expressed research questions were outdated, if we don't no longer need to answer those questions, we can say it's not a timely study. What is its purposivity? It means its fitness for purpose. What is its specificity and accessibility, its scope, its responsiveness to user needs and predicted usage, and its concern for enabling impact. Means its dissemination for impact. And at last, its flexibility and operationalizability. It means the development into practical terms and utility for audiences. We can operationalize our research into specific ideas, and then we should answer specific questions by this research. And the third item to ensure the quality of research is the capacity building and value for people. It means the partnership, collaboration, and engagement. Its plausibility from the practitioner's perspective, its reflection and criticism. It means the research that develops reflexivity and self-reflection. Its receptiveness. It means the research that enhances the receptiveness of practitioners and a wider audience and stimulating personal growth. And the other item is economic dimension to ensure the quality of research planning. It should be a cost-effective research. We should exert effort. We should sometimes we spend money or physical resources. We should answer this question: is it worth in terms of the intended outcomes? it should be a cost-effective research economically. And its marketability and competitiveness. In the research market, each research has a place, and our research should be marketable and should have a competitive place in the research market. Its auditability, its feasibility, its originality, and value efficiency are the other items that we can measure, we can ensure the quality of our research. And I keep it short. It has been nearly 40 minutes. Thank you so much for your participation. If you have any question, we can discuss at this stage. Otherwise, we can finish.
Thank you, Professor Mehmet, for this very interesting and thoroughly detailed research. So the floor is yours. Floor is open for any questions. You can type it, the question, or you can raise a hand and I will unmute you because due to the a lot of number of participants in this session, let's do the question answer session like this.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So there is a first question in the chat box. Thank you for the presentation.
Aygül, yes, Aygül, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. When writing a literature review, it's not possible to find one suitable theoretical basis. So this research topic doesn't focus on one particular issue, but consists of many. Yeah, it's a kind of confirmation of the things I asserted. Yeah. Thank you for your contribution. Yes, you're right. Thank you so much, Professor Dushon. It's not an excellent presentation. Thank you so much. You are excellent. Thank you so much.
So please type your question.
Ainur, yes, Ainur wrote a question. What kind of survey types can you recommend for research proposal? It depends on your research aims, research questions. It totally depends on your research questions. If you specify your research questions, I can give you more specific explanations. Because each type of research question requires specific research designs and research methods. And each type of research design requires a specific type of data collection and analysis approach. So we should be very specific. Thank you, Professor Janet. To ensure high status of the teacher in Kazakhstan, yes. Ainur wrote a statement there.
Hello, Prof.
Yeah. Yeah, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Prof, I just want to find out what are the possibilities or what strategies can you share with us as master students that what are the possibility of producing a high quality research dissertation that can automatically be viewed at the PhD level?
Yeah. In the beginning, we should answer a serious problem. We should try to solve a real problem in real life or in educational system. This is the first. We should have a strong argument and we should persuade the readers or the evaluators or reviewers that we are solving a significant problem in education. Might be a local problem, might be a global problem, but we should solve by this research, we should solve a real problem. Otherwise, it's not a contribution to the science. And we should state our research aims, research purposes in our literature review. It should be conclusive, it should be comprehensive, and it should be persuasive. But you can imagine we give those methodological courses during a semester, sometimes methodology 1, methodology 2, during a year, sometimes 1.5 years, we give those courses. I just tried to summarize some essential information. That's it. But each title requires a more comprehensive explanation. I just tried to briefly go through those information.
So, Professor Mehmet, we have two questions in the chat box from Aygul and Aytuğan.
Aygul, programming languages. I used different programming languages, but I used different software in analysis. Some of them requires coding, requires writing syntax. Some of them don't require. I used Lizral before. It has a language, but now I'm generally using Amos instead of Lizral. It doesn't require using any syntax. But I can suggest you use R programming language, or now nowadays I'm working on another one, M+. M+ is an excellent software. For R, we have an expert here, an R expert, a programming language expert, Professor Matthew Courtney. You can ask him the details if you need R. Yeah, Matthew is an excellent expert in programming, especially he's an R expert and he knows M+ very well in multi-level analysis. He is the best. I think he is the best at GSE. Thank you for being with us, Matthew.
Thank you for those words, Mehmet, but I don't think I'm the best at GSE. There's it's being used in, R is being used in the social sciences for undergraduate students. So they're learning it there as well. In economics, people are using it. Even in engineering, they're using it as well. So it's an open source library of software packages. So if you learn some good basics first, you can really go a long way. But it takes time. It's taken me years to get good at it, and it's quite frustrating. So, but if you want to try, then you can get some tips from me. No problem. Thank you, Mehmet.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you so much.
There is another question, Professor Mehmet.
Yeah.
Could you recommend the literature for more detailed information on research methods from Aytuğan?
A literature for more detailed information on research methods. There are many books, many journal articles about this topic. I can suggest many resources. Maybe if you can communicate privately, there are many resources I can suggest. If you, Aytuğan, if you ask me a specific resource, I can write many of them. Yeah, Professor Matthew wrote something. What if your quantitative research finds no statistically significant results? If you still have a great design and follow good methods, can you still publish your work? Can you give an example? Yes, I have several frustrating examples. I threw, 2 times, I threw all my findings, all my study into the rubbish bin. I threw it out. It didn't make sense. It was totally nonsense, the results. And I understood that they didn't even think of the questions. They just clicked. It is a quantitative research. And I threw my results into the rubbish bin. But if it makes sense, it might not be statistically significant. In that case, yes, we can still report our results and we can still try to publish our work. If we have strong arguments and if we have enough literature to discuss our findings, yes, we can still publish it. Even if the results are not statistically significant, it's also a result and it's also a contribution to the literature. I also have several examples. Yes, I tried to publish and it was published. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. There's another question from Ainur.
Yeah. While choosing our topic, is it compulsory to make comparison, choosing our topic? Yes, we should, in the literature review, we should comparatively discuss the relevance or the contribution or the originality of our topic. And we should state it very clearly in the relevant literature. Yes. And another person, that no significant relationship is also a finding. Yes, it's also a finding. It's also a finding. And other researchers can also cite us, can also use our findings in their research. They can also not find any significant relationship and they can cite us, or they can find a significant relationship and then they can state their findings. They can discuss their findings with our findings. Yes, it's also a significant contribution, I can say.
Thank you, Professor Mehmet. Are there any other questions?
Thank you so much for your participation. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Professor Mehmet.
There are better experts, with us now. Some of them participated in this webinar. They also gave other webinars, and they will give. We have an excellent team of researchers at the GSE. Thank you all for your participation.
Thank you everyone for coming. So at this point, we will finish our webinar series. Next one will be published on our social pages, Facebook, Instagram, and also it will be posted on the website of the Graduate School of Education. Please stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Thank you.